Hey everybody, this is Matthew Soltesiak, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast. This season, it's all grit. I speak with a variety of guests and interview key players, gaining more insight on what makes this team go. The Detroit Lions are now in a new grittier era, and we look beyond just the kneecaps when it comes to the analysis. Welcome to another episode. In this episode, we discuss the major contract extension the Detroit Lions gave Jared Goff. Plus, we share our takeaways from Lions rookie minicamp over the weekend, and we'll also talk about the Detroit Lions season ticket situation. Let's get to it, Lions fans.
Hi, everyone. This is Herman Moore, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast.
I'm joined today by James Cook, senior sports writer for the Traverse City Record Eagle. You can also hear him on the Get Around podcast that drops on Mondays. James, as usual, good to have you here.
Hey, thanks for having me, man.
And you know what? It's a good reason to be here. We have our third big contract news of the offseason for the Lions. And again, it's the third contract extension. So, James, let me set it up for the listeners. I think they know most of this at this point, but let's start with the details. Adam Schefter first reported this. The Lions and Goff agreed to a 4-year deal. He reported $212 million extension, $170 million guaranteed. This adds on to his current deal. He had 1 year remaining. That puts him with the Lions through 2028. The projected numbers were a $27 million cost for Goff in 2024 with a $32 million cap hit. The full details are yet to be released. We've heard there's a $73 million signing bonus. The contract is really a 3-year deal with a 4th-year option for the team is what we're hearing. And so, James, what's your first reaction to this news?
I was pretty happy about it. I mean, locking up a position like that is something you have to do in the NFL these days. I know there's some people who argue that Jared Goff is not an elite quarterback, and whatever. I mean, but the statistics last season bear out that he was in the top 10 and top 5 in a big chunk of the good stats that you want to be in for a quarterback last season. And they've got the entire offense coming back pretty much, except for Reynolds pretty much. And so I expect those numbers to keep going.
First thing that comes to mind for me is what Brad Holmes has said about the quarterback position. It's easier to get worse than better at the position. Now, you can only say that if you're pretty good at the position, and that's where the Lions are. And so my reaction is initially good. I'm glad we got it done so we can stop talking about it. People were talking about it over a year ago, and a year ago was too early to do the extension. Now, obviously, the earlier you do an extension, usually the less money it's going to cost because always the newest one drives the price up. That's kind of been the trend for, I don't know if it's been 3, 4, 5, 7 years from now or whatever, whether it's quarterback, wide receiver, they tend to be resetting the market. And so I'm glad we got him for 3 more years, 4 with a 5th-year option at this point. That helps us, again, keep the band together, keep the distractions away, and let us move forward with this year.
Yeah, and I think you're going to see, I think some people are going to say, oh, well, this kind of straps the team cap-wise and everything. And I'm like, well, not really. I mean, if you look at the NFL, more than half of the NFL right now is paying their quarterback over $40 million a year. And most of those teams are the ones who are winning and going deep into the playoffs as well. It's I know there was the whole popular thing of having a quarterback on his rookie contract and you can spend so much money other places. But how often does that work out? And who's actually won a Super Bowl doing it that way? There's been a few teams maybe that have gotten to a Super Bowl, and aside from Patrick Mahomes, I don't think that it's really happened. So it's kind of wishful thinking at this point. You get your quarterback, you develop them, you pay them, and you hope you got a guy for a decade and you get a couple of windows in there for a Super Bowl. And that's where the Lions appear to be right now.
Yeah, you're exactly right. That's hitting on the lottery ticket. I think the Seattle Seahawks probably did that with Russell Wilson. It's like a 3rd-round pick. And I don't know if he was on his rookie contract when they won that Super Bowl, but that is luck. And I don't remember Seattle kicking a great quarterback out to make that happen. They drafted him out of necessity. Now, you're right. The thing some people are talking about is how much money did they pay? I mean, if you look at Spot Track, it breaks it down and says it's an average of $53 million a year. Now, we do know with contracts, things, it's not every year is the same. Things go up and down based on the way it's structured. It's become popular to add void years. But if we're just kind of looking at things, this extension puts Jared Goff just ahead of Justin Herbert and right behind Joe Burrow, who Joe Burrow's on a 5-year, $275 million contract. Now, James, you talked about what quarterbacks are getting paid today, right? There are currently right now 5 quarterbacks who have an average of $50 million or more. That is Joe Burrow, Jared Goff, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, who signed a contract last year, and Jalen Hurts. And so Hurts, Herbert, all those guys that are above at 50 or above signed their contract either last year or Jared Goff this year. And so that is going to be the new norm if you believe you have a franchise quarterback. Now, if we just go a little bit further, I think you already mentioned the $40 million mark, right? There are 7 guys at $40 million to $46 million. And that's Kyler Murray, Patrick Mahomes, Kirk Cousins, Josh Allen, Dak Prescott, Matthew Stafford, and Daniel Jones. So that kind of shows you the market for starting quarterbacks who aren't, at the end of their career necessarily. Some may have progressed to that, but a starting franchise quarterback is going to cost you north of 40 and north of 45 for even better.
Yeah, and you look at the guy that's right ahead of him, Joe Burrow. One of the things about Jared Goff is being very durable. Even though he's not a guy who looks like he's, massively built or anything like that, he's been very durable because, one, he's had a pretty decent offensive line in front of him in LA and now especially in Detroit. And he's very good at not taking big hits, at getting rid of the ball and not taking those hits. Joe Burrow, the guy right ahead of him, making more money than he is, has missed 13 games in 4 seasons, big chunks of 2 seasons.
Yeah, the durability is a big thing. I mean, look what Kyler Murray is making. He's making $46 million. And Patrick Mahomes is at 45, but he signed that like 4 years ago and it's a 10-year deal. And so, you can't compare it completely apples to apples because like Josh Allen's contract was done in 2021 as well. So some time has gone by. The one thing I've heard from some people is 53 million's too much. And they said, Jared Goff is really good, but he's not elite. And so we brought up the numbers. I mean, in a lot of stats, he was top 5 last year, in yards complete or yards passing. He was number 2 in the NFL last year. In completion percentage, Jared Goff, well, he was number 7 last year. You can pick and choose your stats and you can probably use them to form your argument the best way you want to. But there's no denying that Jared Goff's a top 10 quarterback.
Yeah, I think so. And the durability helps. You look at the other guys who are making over $40 million a season, and about half of them have had seasons in the last couple of years where they've missed a significant chunk of a year. Jared Goff hasn't, and if Jared Goff does, the Lions have Hendon Hooker, who maybe could be one of the best backups in the NFL. We don't quite know, but I mean, he's a first-round talent sitting there on your bench. So they've got that. But the $53 million number, that's just the average.
Well, look at Jared Goff right now. The contract he's on is considered a bargain. And when he signed it, the Rams felt like they were stuck with him at this way highly paid, overpaid contract. And just 2 years later, that became just the opposite because his play improved so much and the quarterback market went up so much. And so you're right. We don't know. And we know the salary cap keeps increasing every year. And they could add some void years. And again, they're not going to structure it every single year the same. They're probably going to stagger it around Penei Sewell and around Amon-Ra St. Brown's contracts so they don't all hit the same price at the same point. Because that's another thing some people are concerned about is, hey, what does this do to the salary cap? Can the Lions afford other good players? But you already mentioned this. Any team that has a really good quarterback, they're keeping that quarterback. They're paying them. And the sooner you pay them, the cheaper it really is. And if you're not sure about that math, folks, look what's about to happen in Dallas with Dak Prescott.
Yeah. If you look at the last, I'd say 15 years in the NFL, you can name the number of top half of the league starting quarterbacks who hit free agency on one hand, and two of them are Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, exactly. And Kirk Cousins, he mastered the free agency thing and getting all the money. And again, if you're like, wow, the Lions gave him so much, you know what? This isn't the first time the Detroit Lions gave a quarterback a hefty contract extension. Back in 2017, they signed Matthew Stafford to a 5-year, $135 million deal. Now, that number is a lot smaller than what we just gave out. But two things. One, salary cap was very different back then. And that made Stafford the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. And at that point, he had not won a playoff game, and he still became the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. Now, some will say that Jared Goff needs to have all this talent around him. Everything's got to be perfect. And that's one of those narratives that just grows old with me, James. I hear so many people say it. If the things aren't perfect for Goff, it doesn't work. And I think that's true of most quarterbacks in the NFL. There's a select few that can do some stuff that nobody else can. But things have to be good, sure, but they don't have to be perfect, because we've seen Jared Goff with his back against the wall, a la Chicago Bears in Detroit, with no time left, and they go down and get the job done. So does it work better when he has an offensive line and he doesn't have to scramble because he's not the most mobile quarterback? 100%. But I just want to point out, again, the Lions have given big contracts out to the quarterback position. I really think it was important to get Goff locked up like this for these next few years, and that's the price you got to pay. I also think it says something about the culture here, James.
Yeah, I think it does. You look at how, and Jared Goff is popular with his teammates. I mean, was it the third day of the draft when Amon-Ra St. Brown and all those other players came out to make one of the picks? They got a Jared Goff chant going during the draft. And the fans obviously have bought in, with the Lions fans, the Jared Goff fans, even appearing at other pro sporting events other than Detroit Lions stuff. So just keeping that culture going with him, it is that continuity. Ben Johnson actually, loves him, and they work well together. So keeping Jared Goff may also be a key to keeping Ben Johnson longer than next season too.
That could play hand in hand. And you know what? It changes the debate. Fans aren't debating whether Jared Goff is good enough for the Lions. They're debating how much he should be getting paid. That shifts the conversation. And I talk about the culture part, James, because, I talked earlier this offseason that the Lions had to pay Amon-Ra St. Brown. They had to, because otherwise everything they're saying doesn't matter, because they're talking about culture and grit and hard work. And Amon-Ra St. Brown embodies that. Penei Sewell embodies that. Jared Goff embodies that. And so if you're looking for the Lions to make those big free agent signings, well, they took care of their own guys instead. They brought in a guy or two that can help. They made a trade, but they took care of the guys that are there, and they're not letting the big guys leave. And that's the huge thing that tells you the franchise is getting it right, James.
Yeah, and they got it right from the beginning on this trade. I mean, the talk coming out now about that trade is that the Lions got that second first round pick for taking Jared Goff's contract.
And okay, so James, let's talk about the alternative, because we have to, right? Some people are like, I would not have paid him that much, because I remember hearing a debate on the radio about a month ago. Would you rather have Dak Prescott at $53 million, or would you rather have Michael Penix Jr. on a rookie contract if you're the Cowboys? And I heard some people say, I'd probably rather have Michael Penix Jr. than Dak Prescott at that price difference. So let's talk about this. What if the Lions let Jared Goff walk? Some people are like, Hendon Hooker, we think he's going to be talented. Well, we know he's talented. We think he's going to be good. But we talked about that before. It's like a lottery ticket. You don't know. And so, and if you have something that works, why would you let it leave? So I think the other thing we forget is, before Matthew Stafford and Jared Goff, the Lions struggled at quarterback for a very long time. Now, if you were not a Lions fan before 2009, you don't know this history. And it's a big deal. I came up with one way to relate it, James, and I'm a little maybe reaching here, but tell me what you think about this. When I was a little kid, the Lions had a kicker named Eddie Murray, and he was really good. They called him Eddie Money for a while. Then he was replaced by Jason Hanson, who was there forever. Like, I don't know if it was 25 years or 23 years. And then they had like a bump in the road for about 6 games with 4 kickers. And then we got Matt Prater. And he was there for like, I don't know, 5, 6 years, 7 years. Good. It's been pretty bumpy since Matt Prater's been gone, right? And so don't take for granted what you have. And I brought this up before that a year or two ago, I think Lions fans were taking Jared Goff for granted. And I think we've seen that shift with the crowd getting into it, like you said. I think it's so important to understand how good he is and how many other teams would like to have a quarterback of his quality.
Mm-hmm. And I think the other thing you're going to see in the very near future, when Dak Prescott gets his extension, you're going to see him get more money than Jared Goff got. And what has he done in the NFL? Goff has been to a Super Bowl and an NFC championship game, a Super Bowl with a Rams team that had struggled for a long time, and an NFC championship game with a Lions team that had struggled for a long, long time. Prescott has led a team that is known to be the most underachieving team in the NFL for maybe the last decade.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
More than Goff.
He will. He will. I mean, look what happened with Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like 48 hours later, if that, another receiver passed him. But it speaks volumes to what the administration is doing here, and they're taking care of the guys, and they're getting creative with the salary cap. And yeah, there will be a time, if we keep drafting this well, you won't be able to keep everybody. That will be the case. That is the reality of it. That would be a good problem to have, though.
I think, yeah, it's going to be a great problem to have. I mean, some of the guys that they might not be able to re-sign in the next couple of years, they'll get compensatory picks for them, and then, we know what Brad Holmes does with draft picks, and hopefully if the Lions are as good as we think they're going to be for the next few years, they'll be getting players to come here under value to chase a ring.
Yeah, and again, they're going to build the team with role players as teams do. And again, there's only one Patrick Mahomes. There's no doubt that he is the best quarterback in the NFL right now. Who's number 2? That's up for debate. There's no clear-cut number 2. Some might say it's Herbert or Burrow or Lamar Jackson or Jalen Hurts or Josh Allen. I think those are your 5 candidates for the number 2 spot.
Yeah, I mean, and even Mahomes, people make the argument that Goff needs all these weapons around him, and like Mahomes has had the best wide receiver in the NFL on his roster until the last year or two, and he's had the best tight end in the NFL for his whole career, and also a pretty good line. I mean, they regularly invest draft picks and free agency money into their offensive line. They draft and sign running backs to keep several options back there, to keep the running game going, and they invested in wide receivers as well. Some of them haven't worked out post Tyreek Hill, but they've invested in those positions. You can't say that Mahomes doesn't have weapons.
Right, and we're going to learn a lot about Josh Allen this year because he's going to have a whole different receiving core. We're going to learn a lot about Justin Herbert this year with a whole different receiving core and a new coach. So there's a lot to be gained from this. The big takeaways, though, is we have Goff under contract. He's extended. And if you're a Lions fan, you just got to be happy because it's taken care of. It's not a distraction, and we can move forward. So I am thrilled about it. Again, the final details, the full details are not fully out. We've had pieces leaked here and there, but I'm pretty excited about this. I know Coach Angers. I talked to him off air here, and he's thrilled. He is so thrilled that we got Jared Goff locked up. Any final thoughts here, James, before we switch over to briefly touching on rookie minicamp?
No, I mean, we were doing our podcast on Monday when I got the notification on my phone, that the Lions had extended Jared Goff, and we immediately started talking about that.
As you should, because it's big news. It's huge. And I think you're the one that told me about it. And I was like, what? I mean, it was seconds old when you told me. And so thanks for breaking that to me.
We were recording our podcast while I texted you that.
Man, a man of many talents, multitasking like that. So anyway, that quarterback situation's looking pretty good. All right, James, let's briefly touch on rookie minicamp. It happened over the weekend. Terrion Arnold, Enos Rakestraw, the top two defensive backs, or top two draft picks as well, seem to be developing a friendship or a camaraderie early in the process. Arnold had a great quote when they asked him about it. And he said he'd jam his own mom into the dirt if he was lined up across from her. So that was kind of funny. He just talked about his competitive nature. I saw on social media like the next day that he had obviously a big shout out to his mom for Mother's Day. But it was great seeing them get some reps, hearing about that. Any other of the undrafted free agents you hear anything about or any takeaways?
Yeah, they ended up keeping two of their tryout players. From the thing who made their 90, the wide receiver, and then the veteran tight end, who has been in the NFL for 4 or 5 years now, known more as a blocking tight end, but I think is somebody who they could keep around on the practice squad, as just kind of an emergency guy, and can catch the ball. So he's not just a completely one-dimensional guy. But just everything I've heard about him, hard worker, very good blocker, good teammate, all those kind of things that the Lions look for, a kind of a perfect practice squad player for them, potentially, depending on what things happen in training camp.
Yeah, in addition to the undrafted free agents they had under contract that were in, they did bring in a handful of players for a tryout. Cade Peterson and Theo Day were the quarterbacks they brought in. Lions did not sign either one of them. They're going into training camp, 90-man roster with 3 quarterbacks on the roster: Jared Goff, Hendon Hooker, Nate Sudfeld. They did sign those other 2 players you mentioned, Parker Hesse, I believe his name is, and the wide receiver Caden Davis. The roster is now at 90. It's full. Not the undrafted free agents, the guys who came in for the workout, the tryout, and got signed. It's going to be an uphill battle because our roster is that much deeper. You're right. That tight end is known more of a blocking guy. James, I don't see a fullback on the roster right now. I don't think the Lions are going to have a fullback this year.
I don't think so either. I think you're going to see a tight end if practicing in that role and in the situations where they need a tight end, you're going to see a fullback doing that, or a backup offensive lineman even, playing kind of a fullback role. But they've got so many guys who have multiple spots that can play in multiple spots and in special teams that it's going to be fun to see how they mix and match this season.
Yeah, I think they value that versatility of taking a tight end, or we saw linebackers last year, like you said, that they can move to the fullback role if they need them for a play or two or something like that. So I think they're going to look at position versatility, which is why I don't think they're going to carry a true fullback either. I will miss Jason Kabinda. Greatly appreciated him. He was on our show, had him as a guest. Great interview, and just a great all-round guy. And so I do hope he catches on with another team. We do know that position of fullback has shifted a lot here in the NFL in recent years. But James, this sets our roster up now at 90. Sets things up well for the OTA offseason workouts, May 21st to 23rd. Everyone's going to be there. These rookies now had 3 days under their belt. So hopefully things run a little more smoothly when everybody gets there with this extra work for them. So that's the 21st to the 23rd, then the last weekend in May. One other thing to mention here, James, Lions season tickets sold out. The Lions announced that early this week. The list was up to 20,000 seats on the wait list this past spring. The Lions said they were able to accommodate about 8,000 or so, and currently that wait list sits right around 10 to 12,000 people, or 10 to 12,000 seats. And so if you're interested, you might want to get your name on it now. They said with 96% retention rate, they were still able to incorporate more people. They don't know what it will look like for next year, the 2025 season. But if you're interested, you just never know. I mean, if the Lions have another good season, we could see this list grow again.
I think you will. Just with the success that the team had, you had all the diehards who had stayed with this team for 30 years through all the ups and downs, mostly downs. And then, you had a lot of people getting back on the bandwagon after the last 2 seasons, and it's going to happen even more.
All right, James, you know what that means, though? It's going to be another fantastic atmosphere at Ford Field. And hopefully this will give the Lions another amazing home Ford Field advantage. So looking forward to that as well. Got lots of stuff coming up, folks. Schedule release, OTA offseason workouts. We will check in when those things hit. James, thanks for being here. I love talking Lions and talking the Jared Goff extension with you.
And me too.
And thank you so much for tuning in, folks. You can find more episodes and content at notthesameoldlions.com. If you're listening on YouTube, please hit the like button. While you're at it, tell your friends about the show and please subscribe regardless of your listening platform. Until next time, stay gritty, my friends.